Let me invite for his view one South African movement leader, Mmusi Maimane, on this issue. Mmusi, quite interesting that just yesterday morning we had the presidency spokesperson, Vincent Magwenya, talking about how President Ramaphosa was ready to answer questions on Phala Phala. And then we listened to what he actually said before Parliament yesterday, which is no different to what has already been in the public space. And tonight we hear him say he's perplexed that opposition parties are up in arms and actually believes that they're being opportunistic. What is your reading of the situation?
Good evening, and good evening to fellow South Africans. I think first and foremost, we must answer the basic question, has state capture ended? Because in effect, the one faction has lost power and is being prosecuted, and now the other faction has got the power. And I say that because yesterday wasn't just the president who avoided accountability. He was being supported by his members of parliament who were happy to go along, including a speaker who was quite comfortable in being able to go, what the president said suffices as an answer to the question. Now, accountability is an important thing in our country. When the president appears before parliament, he appears in the person of the president and in the office of the president. In that instance, he's well within his rights to be able to respond to all questions, as he did before about his son's businesses, as he does now, and he's obligated to respond on Phala Phala. This cannot be that he has a reliance on institutions that report to him. An SIU investigation and a proclamation would only be given by the president. In fact, the other arms of government that are tasked to investigate this matter, it report to the executive. The policing matter report to Peggy Cele. So frankly, I think that it was in many ways a failure on the part of the president, supported by his party, a failure on the part of the speaker, and ultimately, more seriously, on this matter, given that there's a Section 89 process that is going to go on, it is only raising higher levels of suspicion as to what this money was in fact for and why the president has failed to be able to give. If there's no guilt, there's nothing to hide. Why then rely on processes of investigation rather than where the best platform for any president is afforded, which is Parliament, to come and give? We must end state capture and the president must respond.
Why do you think that the president and his office do not see his failure to account before Parliament as exactly that, and are rather switching the view onto the opposition and making it look like it is the opposition parties that are doing something wrong here and that are being unreasonable in their request?
Well, there's always a formula in ANC communication. Anything you don't agree with must be either propaganda or just opportunism. In fact, if I've heard them use the word opportunism, every time I would have been a millionaire if I got 100 rands for them saying that. It's just political spin. When we really strip through it, this is a party that has captured the state. This is a party that avoids accountability. And now they've just changed the face of a president, but the formula remains the same. I can recall when we wanted to go and see what was going on in Nkandla. The same, it's opportunism, it's the opposition trying to do something. Now it's the same on Phala Phala. The script is exactly the same, the events may differ slightly. What I would ask for the people of South Africa here is to realize, as I've said it 100 times, that this is not a presidential problem, it's an ANC problem. And if we really want accountability, Parliament is the place where people actually demand that. And whether we accept it or not, the president, even in a Section 89, even in a parliamentary voting process, all the ANC members will come and vote in unison to defend whatever is there. And therefore, I would call upon saying the president must in fact be invited to come to Parliament to answer on nothing else except on this particular matter. It's the only place. It's not the Integrity Committee. It's nowhere else except for being in Parliament. Or in essence, then the president is avoiding serious accountability and his party support.
Of course, how Parliament responds in moments like this tells us about what it has learned from history, particularly from the fourth session of Parliament, where we had incredible indictments on the inability to actually hold the executive to account. And so with that in mind, what needs to happen for this parliament to show that it is no longer a parliament that refuses to hold the executive to account?
Well, I've made a number of proposals, right? The first is that you need a speaker that is independent. Goes without saying, because if the speaker remains continually a member of the party and a senior member at that, as far as NEC's rankings are concerned, they have a duty to protect their own leadership. They'll never uphold the constitution above the leadership of the party that has deployed them. Secondly, I think we need electoral reform. Part of electoral reform is not about saying, in fact, that you want independence to stand. It's actually about saying, if people vote against their party, they're defended by the constituency they come from. So I would dare say there could have been ANC members yesterday who had a semblance of conscience, who said, actually, no, we don't also accept that, and our constituents don't accept that. Therefore, the president must respond. And thirdly, and more crucially, once you establish that as a principle of parliament, that people don't have to be beholden to party constitutions, but to the country's constitution, then you will stop what is typically called permission to plunder, which is when the parliament allows the executive to plunder the state, as we saw in state capture. You will then have effective mechanisms of accountability. And then lastly, when it comes to established ad hoc committees of parliament, I do think independent judges can be brought onto that. I think powers of subpoena must be used far more effectively. And then the public, the people of South Africa, deserve every right to know. This is a seminal moment in our democracy. And the people of this country needed to have watched the proceedings of yesterday in order for them to recognize the fact that they don't vote for the president, they vote for a party. And maybe in future it must be that we can directly vote for a president, because when you do that, that president will never be able to say it's party above the people. But in this instance, they will answer to the people. So I'm calling upon citizens to say, let them reform the Electoral Act, but also more seriously, ensure that they participate in democratic practices. And I would petition Parliament to establish that committee, call the president and citizens. It must be open for citizens to come and observe and participate.
One South Africa leader, Mmusi Maimane. Let's leave it there for tonight.